before we get to that, just our thoughts and prayers and just our heartbreaks for Coach Sean Clark and his family. To lose a guy that young that affected so many lives in such a positive way. I had a chance before the game I think Bo was on the sidelines with me, and he had his son Braxton there, and just a lot of similarities to those football families and just how important it is that they share their father quite a bit, and to lose one that early, our hearts go out to them, and just feel really bad for Janelle and for Gianna, and just want them to know that we're all thinking about them. But ultimately, good game, for us as we went through it the other day. And I thought we started to play more of a complete game. When we went through that first game against Weber State, we, had questions that we needed to kind of get answered. We thought we got some answered, but you just didn't know the caliber of the opponent. Then we get to Louisville, and there's a lot of questions that arise after that game. But ultimately, I think we played a really good team. They were a really good team in week 2, and I think that defensive line just wrecked a lot of what we were doing. And that's the problem going into a bye week when you have 15 days off, as you're trying to, figure everything out. You have one that you say, man, we played really well. You have another that you said you didn't play well, or was that just a really good, team? And I think it proved to probably be that in some ways. And then we got to this game, and I thought we did a really good job. We handled it really well. Third downs were phenomenal for us, and we put ourselves in a position where we could be successful and not get behind the chains and not find ourselves in third and longs, or too many fourth. I don't even know if we went for it on a fourth down because we did not have to. So those are the things that we really need to be able to do, stay ahead of the chains. We found ourselves in I guess 1 3rd and 14, 1 3rd and 7, and then we had any other time we were behind, all of a sudden there was a bigger play that came up to just even the chains out or get us back to a first down. So that was really important. Defensively, not the best in the first half. I think this was a tale of two halves, obviously, but we let that quarterback scramble around quite a bit. We got some pressure on him, but if we just stay in our pass rush lanes and understand the difference between a running quarterback and maybe one that decides when he's under duress to run and one that decides when he's under duress to throw. There's a big difference in there, and that comes down to matching hands and trying to get the ball on the ground and get tipped balls and do all that. But if they're going to take off and run, reaching up with a hand or jumping or doing something of that nature just does not work out, and I think we've learned that lesson hopefully now in live fire, and we'll understand it a whole lot better. So there's just a lot in there that's got to get cleaned up as we go into conference play. This is ultimately what it's all about, and this team is very, very good. I just said it in the previous press conference, but we had a couple games last year of the shoulda, coulda, woulda types. This was not one of them. This team, really beat us up, and they were the better team that day. We had trouble snapping the ball and staying on sides and catching a snap, yet alone blocking them. So there's a whole lot in here that we got to be really, really good at by the end of the week, and we certainly have our work cut out for us, and we're excited to get to work.
We kind of touched on this on Saturday, but talked more about Zoe's passing than his running. How do you like how he's moving around now, even just 9-ish months after the surgery?
Yeah, I thought he looked great. I don't think he's at his full speed just yet, but I do like the way he was willing to pull the ball down and have some designed run plays and things like that for him, and I thought he did a really nice job of that. He distributed the ball really well. He found a lot of different receivers, and he found them and got the ball out quickly. Now, he wasn't under much duress, and I thought he handled that, but when he stood in there and took 2 shots, one of them on a touchdown pass that, a lot of times that might be something he would just eat or throw it away, and he stood in there and saw something open and, stood in long enough to deliver that touchdown, and that was great to see. But yeah, he's really doing a lot of great things right now, including getting us into the right plays, etc.
And obviously there are a lot more new players on this team than what went through this Georgia Southern game last year. But have you noticed maybe a chip on their shoulder with what they experienced down there last year?
Not yet. I mean, we had our practice on Sunday, and we had our lift and our run and everything else, and that was a big part of the second half of that meeting that we had, was just making sure they understood that game we were in. We went back through a lot of the offensive plays, a lot of defensive plays, a lot of us just not being able to execute at all, and I think it's really important that they had to relive that for a minute, especially if they weren't here, to just have an idea of what this team is capable of. So, we're capable of a lot too, though, and that's the exciting part, is that I think our growth in 3 games continued to get better and better and better, and it's got to continue to do that. Every game we got to take a step forward, and I thought we did that on Saturday.
In your opening statement, you were talking about how the Georgia Southern loss last year wasn't much of a what if. How similar do they seem to last year as you look through film?
Very similar, very, very similar. I think their offense is really dynamic. They do a lot. They have their foundational plays, but they dress it up a lot with a lot of motions and shifts and all kind of things like that. They really try to get your eyes in the wrong place, and then they really challenge you on the edges, on the perimeter. Their receivers block really well, but then they have a ton of RPOs off of it, and then they have a ton of opportunities for them to come down and crack in the box and be physical, and they're not afraid to do that. So those are the things that really, if you think of anything last year, counter, a trick play here and there, the quarterback being able to get the ball out of his hands, those were all things that showed up a little bit more from them last year, but their ability to run the ball is what, really showed up, in that game, and control the clock, and then have a couple, the little tight end screen on the, down in that, on the other side of the 50 is where they get creative, and they have a whole, you could pull up their all plays cut up and take a look at all their gadget plays. There's a ton of them in there. So there's a lot that they do, and a lot of it works in their favor. Sometimes it doesn't. And we just got to make sure when we have opportunities like we did on Saturday, 2 interception opportunities, we got to come down with those because we got to steal a possession somewhere in here.
And to go back to Saturday, I know you said that the rotation at quarterback, or in this case the lack thereof, is kind of something that unfolds within a game. Is that still something that you're assessing week by week that
definitely
can change throughout the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that each week presents itself in a different way. Obviously, we talked enough about game 2 that it became more of a thing where we needed to just be more physical. And then this game we found ourselves in really advantageous down and distances, and we were able to execute our offense at a pretty elite level. So, we did a good job.
Obviously a huge game on the ground on Saturday, but kind of the statistical outlier going to that game that Liberty had already given up a lot of yards on the ground. Do you get a sense that the running back room is just not satisfied after that one performance?
Oh, yes, I would say that's very true. Yeah, I just thought that the way they ran the ball, though, is what was impressive to me. We haven't seen Io, in a little while. We haven't seen him be able to put his pads down and run through people and, just keep his feet churning. And those were the things to me that stood out. He had an unbelievable block, too, on the one jet that we handed off. He was just just played a physical game. And we know that Wayne does that as well, but it was great to see Io out there doing that too. So, along with his speed and his vision and his, his quickness and his ability to, just open it up a little bit, that was great to, see him go out and play that style of game. But I don't think they're satisfied. I don't think anybody's satisfied. I think we know that team we played is different than the team we're about to play. And this team we're about to play is really good.
At this point of the season, on the other side of the field, you guys I think are top 10 pretty much every category in passing defense. To lose a defensive play caller last year and then bring in a new guy, is it kind of a relief off your shoulders to start so hot, passing defense?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, that's part of the process as you're going through and you have the defense. I will say this. Some of the teams we started with this season last year are very different than the teams we started the season with this year, just a little bit different. And I think that to be able to do it in against the Louisville and be able to do it, against the other 2 teams is just a little bit different. And I think that watching Coach Hitch be able to marry both together and us just have a lot of, consultation about what worked last year, what we did last year, hold on to some things, get rid of some things, bring in your own twist here. Yes, that's a really important thing. And I think for he and I, we spent a lot of time together over the past 20 years, just talking football since the, whatever year it was when he worked for me back at the D3 school. His growth and it being around some really high-level defensive coaches is important. Again, that's all happened, right? It's now what's about to happen here moving forward. And if we just sit back and say we're really good and relax, we won't be very good. So again, just like you asked about the running backs, I would say the same holds true for the defense, is that yes, it's nice that what we've done up to this point in time, but this is a long season. And, will you be fully intact with all of your starters by the end of it? And how are you getting the next guys ready as far as your development is concerned? How complex are you making things that, we start to play slower? Those are all conversations that we constantly have, but I like the start to the season as far as where we're at on the defensive side for sure.
With conference play starting this weekend, is there a little bit more, I guess, a comfort level with you and your staff just having a little bit more familiarity with the schools and opponents in this league?
Yeah, but that works both ways. We just talked about it on the field out there, yesterday, and it was more of whatever you put on film now is yours, right? So whatever you put on film belongs to you, and every other team is going to use that against you. Not only that, right, but now these guys actually know who you are because they've played you a year ago. Some of you. Now we have, 6 guys, I think, that were here from, 3 years ago, maybe. That's about. So there's not like a long-standing history of knowledge of who those players are, but there's a certainly familiarity with a lot of the guys that played last year against them. So they'll be able to pull up that film, remember what they scouted, and then remember how, what it felt like playing against those guys. So it works both ways. It's great for us because we have an idea of who a bunch of them, who a bunch of those guys are, but they'll have that same with us. But it is one of those things when you start to get into those games, and when you're in year 2, 3, 4 of it, it's a little bit different. But we're in year 2, and I think that right now, our familiarity with a lot of the guys on that team is there. But then that also works, for them.
Do you feel like those advantages are going away, especially too with the transfer portal and even like coaching changes, where it seems like there's not really a lot of carryover anymore?
Yeah, that's pretty much answers that question. Yeah.
I know we asked you about GP's status on Saturday, and you didn't know much at the time. Do you have any further updates?
Yeah, no, I don't have a real update yet. It doesn't look great for him right now. It's a pretty significant muscle pull, so he's just we got to figure out where he ends up when we get to practice tomorrow. Is it possible? Is it not? We just got to work our way through this. We'll have an injury report or whatever that availability report is now that's mandated. That'll come out on Wednesday. So by then, hopefully, we're able to make a final decision.
This one's a little bit more off the cuff, but I know the NCAA announced last week they're going to a single transfer portal. I was just curious if you had a take on that or an opinion or just your overall thoughts. Yeah,
it works both ways, I guess. It prevents, those guys at the end in the spring, the guys that we lost, they're here with us then. They will not be gone. But also there's a lot of guys, if you go back to our spring portal window, there's a lot of guys that contributed these first 3 games and did a really good job of it. So you just got to be more right than you are wrong in December, and you don't have a way to fix it. And the only concern I have with that is just the numbers and the dollar amounts that are flying around at the higher level, and what ends up being left. That's pretty much the case anyway in any scenario. But us being able to just use our own evaluation and not try to compete with the guys that have quadruple, double, quadruple, even more, 10 times, the amount that we have. It's not worth it to try to compete with that. We just got to make sure that we're finding the guys that fit us for the right reasons. And I think now, after 2 years, you have a really good understanding of what works here and what doesn't work here, as far as personalities, et cetera, that might go with what we're asking him to do in our program and what we're asking him to do in this community. It's got to be a good fit all the way around. It can't just be he's a good football player. It's got to be the whole person, and that's what we take a lot of pride in.
Just want to go back to Saturday. I don't know if I can recall seeing this type of play, but Liberty running a little bit of a variation of a tush push on 4th and short. Yeah. I know you're a little defensive-minded coach. What are your thoughts on that play kind of coming around at a collegiate level? And do you think that's something that may be spreading a little bit more forward? Oh,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that, that they did a really good job of it. We were in a 3 down front the one time, and that's not where you want to be. So that one, we almost conceded to them at that point in time. But the next one, when we were in our different front and when we were loaded up, they ended up, having the variation off of it. And if, Spinagatti just slows down a little bit, that ends up probably being a 5 or 6 yard loss on 4th and 1. So that's what they did more of when we watched them in years past. They had, a little sweep off of it. They had another little like almost fumblerooski type thing. You'll see teams get really close and snap it through the legs to the to the running back, who then runs into the line and throws a little dump pass to the tight end. Like that's the threat of it is, can you just line up and handle them, right? Like the Eagles line up and do it, and they don't worry about it. They just do it, right? And nobody seems to be able to stop them. But other teams that maybe get stopped or aren't sure of the matchups up front, that's where all those variations come off of it. And now you got to be right on the edges. You can't all just, bury yourselves in there, which then creates the advantage to go back to the original play at some point in time.
You mentioned a minute ago you'll have that availability report for the first time. Mm-hmm. Do you like having something standard that like everybody has to kind of adhere to the same thing?
Yeah, I think having anything. I remember back in the day it was you had to submit your 2 deep, and then you look at the 2 deep and it wasn't even close to being right. So I think that maybe there's some actual, accountability in there, because I think there's fines with it if you're incorrect or if you're holding back information. So there's things like that are good. The motivation for it is for different reasons from what I could gather, but ultimately it's a thing that you hopefully have an understanding of who's going to be out there. Because usually we wait for game day and then look and go like, okay, that kid's in a jersey on the sideline. But you're game planning for everything all week, and here this prevents a little bit of that, which is good.
Well, maybe what you just alluded to, like, obviously I know players sometimes like hear from gamblers things that like they really shouldn't have to deal with. Does this help with that also in that regard?
Does it help with our players not dealing with gamblers and just giving the gamblers the information? Yes, it helps with that.
Sometimes they're abused by like, hey,
I know.
Why didn't we hear this?
Yes, correct. So yes, I think so, and that's what I was alluding to. Yes.
Coach, you mentioned after the game about Elijah Culp, and what is he bringing to the table for you with him and Justin Eaglin? Again, the so-called experts that look at all the stats, they've graded out very well so far.
Yeah.
Can you talk about especially Elijah and how Justin are playing?
Well, I mean, Justin, let's go to game 2 in crucial moments. The one thing that he knew he was working on all offseason, all weight room wise, et cetera, was his ability to get his pads down and make hard stops. And he did that in open field twice against a guy probably 60, 70 pounds bigger than him. That was really neat for us to be able to see from him. He's a competitor, and he's doing a great job of just keeps getting better. Culp is very gifted, physically, and he's a fast, quick, tough football player. He's not afraid to put his face in there on any tackles. He plays on the edge quite a bit, and I think that those both of those guys, provide a lot. Then you get to Mackay over there and keep adding it up. Ken Willis, keep going through the list of guys back there. There's a bunch that we're going to rely on at some point in time, but those two are sort of the two that are standing out the most at this moment, and they just got to continue with that. But I'm impressed with both of them, and like I said, J.E. he's a great young man. He's close with Trent, who's one of our captains, and he's a good leader on this team. Elijah's coming in, as a new guy to a team, and he's come from a couple different schools. So that's always a little bit of a challenge, is to try to figure out where do you fit in, who are these people, what scars are you carrying with you from previous places, all the things that come with it. So trust is not that easily developed, but I really like, honestly, his growth off the field at this point in time, even better than his growth on. We knew what he could do on the field, but what he's doing off the field now and how he's growing into just a really good young man that's going to make a lot of people proud later in life when football's done is what I'm most interested in right now for him, and he's doing a really good job of that.
You mentioned the Georgia Southern offense and how dynamic they are, but obviously having a veteran quarterback as well that has a year under his belt.
Phenomenal, yeah.
Talk about that a little bit and how challenging it'll be to contain this offense.
Yeah, well, again, I said it before, but the eye candy and the things they do on the back end, the trick plays, the plays off of the plays, all the things that they do, that's hard to do if you have a first-year guy in your system. They don't have that. This guy's been around for a while, and he's very intelligent. He can read things pre-snap. He does a really good job of pulling the ball down and running when he has to. He knows where the first down marker is on third down. He'll dive head first. Other times he protects himself and slides so he doesn't take shots. He gets the ball out quickly. There's a lot that he does really, really well. Controlling all the motions and the shifts and all the things they do and signaling out to the other receivers and making sure they're all on the same page, or you need a veteran back there to be able to handle that, and he does a really good job of it. But he is how this whole offense works. If he can't handle all those things, they can't do all those things, but he can, so they do.
And what do you see on their defense? What stands out?
Well, they're stout as can be up front, man. They're big, tough, physical dudes up front. They can run sideline to sideline at the linebacker position, and then in the secondary, just keep showing up. They don't take plays off, and they just show up at the ball. There's never, hey, they made this tackle, and there's 2 blue jerseys around it. It's not like that. There's usually 8, 9, sometimes all of them around the ball. So they pursue the football hard, they play hard, and that's what good teams in this league do.
I wanted to ask you about recruiting a little bit. 247 rankings can be a crapshoot sometimes and stuff like that. But if you look at it, class of 22, you have 2 of the highest recruited in-state guys that are now transferred from other programs into JMU with Gobara and Petaway. Does your guys' recruiting staff, you guys take a lot of pride in getting some of those top guys from in-state?
To be honest, I don't take any pride in those rankings at all, honestly, just for us, because it's all a little bit different. Like, what do we need in that position group? Who are the players we have, and who are the ones that we need to jump in there? I think a lot of times, a lot of our guys, even in this class, weren't ranked at all. Now, all of a sudden, are ranked differently. It's got to be the right fit, and that's it for me, is that we need to trust our own evaluation. We need to trust what we see on film. We need to trust how it fits our system, and then we need to meet that person and figure out, is that the right person to add to our team? I think it's nice on the outside for everybody to see, but ultimately, I mean, there's been I'm sure, classes that are really highly ranked that you look at if you went through a lot of the Sun Belt, I don't know, you'd have to take a look at it, but I think there's moments where that guy's so highly ranked and then there's not a lot of production that follows it, right? There's what player fits us, what are we looking for in that position group, and then who is that person, and then ultimately will they give you everything they got? That's probably the most important thing, is not just how many stars does he have next to his name, but will he give you everything he got and play above whatever that might be. And I think, for us, we've done a nice job there, and certainly it's important for the outside world, but we got to get the right people in here that are doing the right things and fit our culture, but also fit what we're asking them to do on the field.